Welcome to Activate. Thank you so much for having me today. Today I want to talk about how you can build human connection in an increasingly digital world. Just a little bit about myself before we get too far into it. My name is Sara Varni and I'm the CMO at Twilio. I've spent around 15 years in customer engagement, and prior to Twilio I spent about 11 years at Salesforce focused on our sales and service products. So it's a space I'm incredibly passionate about, and man, what a year it has been for customer engagement. Let's talk a little bit about how we got here. If I tweeted more, I think many of my tweets would not have aged well. I will say I have been one of the worst predictors of what was going to happen through COVID. And I was telling my friend a story the other day. You know, when we went to go move home from our offices, I packed up my bag of stuff and I had a bag full of stuff and I didn't have room for this pair of shoes. And I just said, well, no big deal. We're going to be back in 3 weeks. And let me tell you now, I really miss that pair of shoes. And I'm not sure exactly when I will get back to them. The point is, we had no idea what the impact of COVID would be, both on our personal lives and our work lives. And I think it's dramatically changed the way we're thinking about digital technologies and customer engagement moving forward. And I'm going to dive into some strategies that you can employ as you think about your digital roadmaps moving forward. Overnight, we've literally had to reimagine everything. Zooms are the new conference rooms, kitchens are the new contact centers, my kids' bedrooms are their new classrooms, and e-commerce is now just commerce. Literally every industry, every type of company has had to reimagine the way that they're engaging with their customers. We've been constantly surveying our customers and the larger community over the last year, and some really incredible stats have emerged. We surveyed 2,500 business decision makers in the throes of COVID last summer. And on average, they said that their digital roadmaps have accelerated by over 6 years. This is incredible. The barriers that used to stand in the way of innovation have been removed overnight, and mainly out of necessity. But people know that they have to embrace digital channels to survive and thrive beyond COVID. And 95% of our customers are seeking new ways to drive customer engagement. 79% say that their budgets have increased when it comes to digital projects. We've also seen some incredible new use cases emerge. Everything from video appointments to telehealth to contactless delivery. There are new ways that people are engaging with brands in ways that are going to stay beyond COVID. I think about even our own virtual conference at Twilio. Delivering a very immersive digital experience has helped us expand to new international markets. It's also been a way for us to show off our products in new ways that we couldn't in a face-to-face experience. And while nothing is better than face-to-face for certain use cases, I think that there will be a world where we want to have both. We want these hybrid experiences where we can get the best of both worlds. Let's talk about a few companies who have really embraced digital throughout COVID, and I believe will emerge even stronger from the pandemic. One that I'd like to start with is Delta. I mean, no industry has been more affected by the throes of COVID than travel and hospitality. And overnight, airlines had to think about how they were going to maintain trust with their customers and make sure that they knew they were by their side through this pandemic and the situations that we were going through. Overnight, Delta figured out ways to communicate with their customers in new ways using all sorts of channels to communicate what they knew from a safety regulation standpoint and what they could expect when they traveled with Delta. And even though this has been an incredibly trying time for the industry, their customer satisfaction rates have never been higher. And I truly believe it's because of their building trust with their customers through communications that they are going to emerge out of COVID even stronger. The second example is Nike. Nike prides itself on building one-to-one experiences with the people who work on their store floor and their customers. And they call the people that are on their store floor Nike athletes. Overnight, none of their retail locations were open, and Nike had to think about how they could create that same experience digitally. So through their contact center technology and through messaging channels, they've empowered their athletes to communicate one-to-one with potential shoppers to walk them through what pair of shoes might be the best for the type of activity they're trying to do, to promote the best athletic wear for their tastes and preferences. And they've been able to replicate that face-to-face experience now in a digital world. Third is Comcast. I think it's very rare that someone wakes up in the morning and says, you know what I want to do today? I want to call my cable provider and figure out how to get something fixed. That is just never a pleasant experience. And what Comcast has done now that they couldn't deploy their field reps out to their field technicians to help solve problems at people's houses, they created a virtual app that helped their contact center agents and their field service agents, people that they normally would send out in trucks, to help troubleshoot problems over video. And this is something that obviously saves time, it saves money, and a use case that they are likely to continue on with post-COVID. So our belief is that many of these use cases are going to last beyond COVID. And now I'd love to show you some data that we think backs that up. We truly believe that for many of these use cases and many of these things where we feel that digital has taken these brands to another level, we aren't going back. 87% of people that we surveyed report that digital engagement will be critical or very important to their success moving forward. And 95% expect to maintain or even increase their investment in digital programs. And that might be daunting if you don't feel like you are ahead on this journey, that you haven't already started. But I think a side benefit of adopting digital is all of the data that you get with it. That is the wind in your sails. And with all these touch points, you can see there's 54% increase in digital interactions now that people have embraced digital more, 63% increase in digital touch points, and 90% increase in customer insights. And, people might look at that data and say, oh, well, maybe it was the kind of the survey you did, or maybe it was the, time of the year that you asked this and people were really in this mindset. But I really start to believe this data when you see organizations making structural changes to really align groups and this way of thinking. And in talking to customers and in talking to the analyst community, we're starting to see customer experience teams merge with customer insights teams because they see the value of bringing these teams together. With having those touch points to analyze and feeding that back into your customer experience, it just becomes this virtual experience where things only improve and improve as you've got more data to work with. So how can you bring human touch and interaction to your digital engagement strategies? I'm going to walk through some concrete ways that you can think about embracing digital and building personalization at scale. And at Twilio, we really think this boils down to three main things. First off, it's recognizing the use case that you're trying to solve for your customer and how they want to consume that particular information. Second, it's about connecting all the data that might live in different departments at your company and surrounding the customer with the right context and demonstrating to them that you understand their preferences and that you are recommending them products that are in line with their tastes and preferences. And third, it's about empowering your employees. So how can you bring all of the information that you have about your customer into one single pane of glass so that your contact center reps can act quickly, can know your customer faster, and get them to the information that they need? So let's dive into that first pillar. It's all about intelligent personalization. And what we mean here is recognizing the use case that you're trying to solve and the channel in which that your customer wants to consume that info. So if you think about marketing use cases and marketing campaigns, SMS and email can be really viable channels. I think about Twilio customers like Walmart, which will use SMS to send current promos, or a customer like Groupon, which uses email to communicate their daily coupons. So the SMS and email can be very fine channels for a marketing use case. But there's also situations where you need account verification or identity verification. And in that case, time is of the essence. And we definitely think that SMS is the most viable channel for those types of situations. But it's definitely not the only channel. And we see customers explore this use case in different ways. For example, ING is a very well-known bank out of Europe. And what they've done is use video to actually verify account identity so that they can open accounts without having someone come into a brick and mortar location. The final use case that we see a tremendous amount of interest in, and especially through COVID, is notifications. And here I think it's critical to identify how time sensitive the information is. If it's super time sensitive, SMS is going to be critical. If it's more archival, like a receipt or an order detail information, email can work just fine. And I think it's also super critical here to take region into consideration. If your audience is in Europe, WhatsApp is probably going to be the most viable way to get to that customer. Let's talk about one of those such customers. Deliveroo is one of the largest delivery services in Europe, and their whole mission is to build customer-centric food delivery. I think about a comparable service in the US. I know I've been a huge Instacart user over the course of the year, and I love the way that I can build a personal relationship with my shopper. We can go back and forth on chat and figure out if an item is out of stock, what I would want as a replacement. And I also love that, we can get real-time details about what's going on. I had a shopper just the other day tell me, you know what? My service in this particular store is not very good. I might not be, super communicative, like in real time, but I will get back to you every 20 minutes or so. And, while this experience was not the ideal situation, at least I had the transparency to know what was going on. And had, I could understand why I would need to be patient to hear back from her, because of what was going on with her phone. That is only empowered through thinking through these digital strategies and thinking about how you can communicate in mass in a personal way. And Deliveroo has really zeroed in on this and figured out ways to communicate with their customers on the channels that they want at that particular time. If you think about a company like Deliveroo, there are many different facets to how they need to communicate with their ecosystem. They have to recruit new food delivery workers. They have to engage new customers to get them excited about food delivery through Deliveroo. And then there's the full life cycle that they need to manage when the customer is actually using the service. And what Deliveroo realized is that 40% of new users were actually initiating their first order on their website. And so what they were missing in that opportunity was an opportunity to push notifications through their application. So what they did instead was use WhatsApp. And through communicating with their customers through WhatsApp and that initial interaction, they were able to increase opt-in for notifications over time by over 25%. And so I want to talk you through the typical Deliveroo journey so you can see what types of communications they're using at every stage of the way. So here, what you're seeing is the typical Deliveroo customer journey. And so it starts with a customer going to the app, placing their order, and they'll receive an email receipt saying, confirming that order has been received. The Deliveroo driver will pick up the food or the items and start on their journey. They will be able to communicate with the customer over WhatsApp to let them know their status. The customer could respond and say, hey, when you get to my front porch, please put it behind this planter box because that's where I want to make sure it's hidden, or that's where I normally pick it up. When the food is delivered, the delivery agent can let them know so that they can go out and get it when it's still hot. And then after all is said and done, an email receipt will be sent to the customer via email so that they have it for their records. So you can see many different touch points along the journey, and Deliveroo was very thoughtful about what types of channel they used for each part of that experience. And so for something more immediate, like the delivery of food right on the doorstep, SMS makes perfect sense. For something that's more archival, like a receipt or a customer survey, email works great. And they've been able to deliver this seamless customer journey that matches up to their brand of customer-centric delivery food, all through using these right channels. Let's transition to our second pillar, and that's about how you can bring all these different data touch points across your company into one seamless experience for your customer. There is customer data that lives in all different parts of your company. It might be sales, it might be marketing, it might be your billing department. And you don't want the end user experience for your brand to mirror your org chart. You want it to be one seamless experience, and you want your customer to feel like the brand understands you and understands, your preferences as a customer. So let's talk about a company that is both a customer of Iterable and Segment, and that's Shift. Shift is a website that brings together buyers and sellers of automobiles. And this is a low volume transaction business, which means that every touch point with these customers is even more and more critical. And prior to thinking about bringing these data touch points together, they had a very siloed customer experience. So someone might get an email from customer service, someone might get an email from marketing, and it definitely showed. It felt like at points they were coming from even different companies. What Shift could do at the time, they could do the basic personalization, they could insert a name, they could insert the last car you looked at, but it wasn't very rich and dynamic. And by the time the person opened that email, that car might have been gone from inventory, and it was not going to create a great customer experience. So using both Iterable and Segment, Shift brought together all of these data sources to create a highly personalized email marketing approach. And now they can dynamically serve up subject lines that match to how the shopper has been engaging online. They can serve up relevant cars and relevant products for them based on what is actually available in inventory and what their search behavior has been. And this has had a dramatic increase on their engagement through these email programs. In fact, using this approach, they have been able to increase their open rates by 50%. And they have doubled their open-to-click rates for their email programs. These are incredible results, and ultimately it's created a better experience for their customers and more affinity for their brand. The third pillar I'd like to talk about is how you can empower your employees to bring together all of the customer data that exists into one single pane of glass so that they can deliver a high level of service when they're engaging with your customers in real time. And the customer that I'd love to talk about to explain how this can be done well is Shopify. Shopify is one of the fastest growing tech businesses in the world. They help support over 1 million small businesses and power their e-commerce. And as the company was growing as quickly as it was, they weren't satisfied with the level of customer service that they were delivering. No one loves to call into a contact center and be bounced around to a number of different departments, having to repeat your information only to be routed again and again. It's a terrible experience, and it really is something that keeps people from calling into customer support in the first place. Shopify recognized that this was a problem, and what they did was bring together all of the different touch points for their customers into a single pane of glass, so that when their customer agent picked up the phone, they would have it all in one place and wouldn't have that experience of having to route someone to multiple places before they problem solved. They brought together things like Zendesk. They brought together things like their IVR and their phone tree response. They brought together all of these common tools that their customer agents would normally need to use and toggle between screens so that they could improve that response time and drive a higher NPS at the end of the day. So in summary, these are the 3 approaches that we believe will be critical to driving more digital engagement and driving personalization in a digital world. It's all about picking the right channel for the right use case to meet your customers where they are. It's all about bringing all of those different data touch points across your company so that your customer feels like you understand their needs and their preferences and are surrounding them with the right context. And finally, it's about empowering your employees. It's all about giving them the tools that they need for the live interactions they're going to be having in your contact center to deliver an amazing experience and get your customers to the information that they need as quickly as possible. So thank you so much for having me today at Activate. I hope that all of you have a safe and healthy 2021 and that you are all ready to embark on accelerating your digital roadmaps. Thank you so much.